What are your inspirations for your MMO? Is it MMORPG? Is it mainly PvE or PvP? So working backwards, it is a primarily PvE MMORPG. It's inspired by the early days of MMOs, maybe not as far back as we could go, but like those late 90s, early 2000s MMOs like Asheron's Call and EverQuest and UO, Dark Ages, things like that. And so really sort of cribbing off the style and gameplay as well. And really when we first started talking about the game, what we were looking at was how much of the things that were added to MMOs became like a branch that became kind of the standard for MMOs at like in that early 2003, 2004 era, where it became more about short session length and making everything as obvious as possible. And oh look, there's a quest person, right? And there's a quest journal and all that stuff. And how much was that the only way to go versus how much is that just a branch where then you could continue to go off in a different direction without some of those conveniences and keeping things more nebulous and not going with sort of graphical interfaces for things like quest journals as opposed to, well, just write this shit down, you know, or go back and speak to the NPC, all that kind of stuff. So we're going in this direction. I live in Germany, but our company is based out of the US, is incorporated in the US, and the bulk of our team is in the US. We've got 2 people who are based in Bahrain, so that's like an hour or 2 hours ahead of my time zone, depending on the time of year. We've got 1 person in Finland. We've got 1 person in Canada. I think everybody else is in the US. Because we've been showing you this stuff from the very beginning. I mean, those of you that are new to the stream, you got to realize this isn't like the, hey, we're at the end stages of the game and we're going to, you know, show you some demos basically before we go live or go into alpha or whatever. We're showing you everything as we go, and we're getting that feedback and your questions as we go. So it's allowed us to be aware of maybe some things we would have otherwise missed and always kind of keep tuning in mind. The game's been playable ever since it was a capsule in a square. So I don't think we've ever had an extended period where we weren't playing in some way or another. Odds are we'll never make everybody happy with the specific implementation of certain classes or combat or whatever, but our hope is that for the majority of folks, you've seen it as it was being built, you understand the decisions, and we've at least nailed the obvious stuff. And what's your vision for the combat system? Are you opting for auto-targeting or more of a skill-based shot combat system for player's environment? So it's definitely tab targeting. Targeted target lock, not a lot of having the twitch or be super skillful. I read somebody had posted on a forum they want to be able to play the game and eat a sandwich at the same time. I think that's a noble goal. So because someone was recommending that, they're like, why are they going for that outdated tab target sort of slow rotation, more tactical position based combat when we could do real-time targeting of each limb and blah blah blah? And the response was basically like, listen, they've been pretty clear in wanting to be old school with this. So, and I think somebody right after that, either that person or somebody right after that was like, I want to be able to play this game and eat a sandwich at the same time. You know, you should be able to, I'm left-handed anyway, I should be able to have this cup of coffee. I mean, it's not full sort of click to move lineage style where you can smoke a cigarette all day and play, but the goal is for me to easily be able to, you know, if I need to click over here instead of hitting a numpad or vice versa, you know, I've got my targets set up, you know, I hit F1, 2, 3, 4, and then I hit my heel. We're all good. As long as there's oh shit moments where the sandwich had to get put down for a moment, absolutely. What's your combat like? Sandwichy. Being able to actually socialize while playing is a bonus. That's part of the goal. Yeah, so having those oh shit moments for sure. Having them work in a way where it's that it really feels emergent. It doesn't feel just super random, but it's more of just something didn't work right. Like, oh, the puller accidentally picked up a roamer that wasn't expected, or somebody trained by at some point, or you got repops on something where you got the timing off a little bit, or oh shit, we didn't realize that so-and-so was out of mana after all, we should have checked. Yeah, there'll be plenty of that. And then we want to also have the abilities in place that are those situational, like playmaker type abilities. Nick's really been focused on that, so that, oh my god, there is this oh shit moment, but there's an opportunity for, depending on your class, for you to potentially get that under control in an interesting way. And then if you've got multiple oh shit moments in a row, then, well, now you're kind of out of the resources to do that, and it becomes more of a like down to that last moment, that last little sliver of mana, making those decisions on who's actually going to get a heal. What about healers? Can they fight mobs as well as DPS oriented classes, or they suffer from a hybrid tax? Free snakes. We want to make sure that the classes or roles don't feel homogenous, while also ensuring that there's a fair amount of utility that gives you some flex to be able to go beyond just sort of like pushing the one button. There's certain things that are more subjective and sort of silly that get thrown out by different people on the team depending on their preferences for classes. So Nick's gathers that info up and is going to basically be working with it, and we'll be playing with it when we're tuning stuff. But, you know, for me, it's like having played Cleric now most recently on the Air Doom when I came back and really enjoyed it. You know, it's like, oh, I wish I was a bit more durable and could off tank for a little bit in a weird situation or whatever. Or I'd like to get in and club things with, you know, my mace or something along those lines, and not just sit in the corner. That said, I also appreciate the fact that I can sit back and eat a sandwich. So it seems like it'll be more relaxed instead of intense MMOs where you get yelled at if you don't do the optimal rotation. I think that's a fair assessment, and it's fair with regards to how we would hope the majority of the game feels. There will be those times where you'll maybe be with a group or in a certain type of environment or situation where, you know, if you screw up, they'll let you know. That was one of the things I really liked about EQ, the ability to recover from mistakes, sometimes catastrophic. Sometimes the players can become the hero that saves it all. That's definitely the goal with you know, I was saying like the playmaker abilities. I think that's Nick's coined a phrase for some of those like long cooldown but critically sort of decisive abilities that we could put in. And the goal for that is to have that be set up in a way where when those moments arise, if you've got it available, you can really turn the tide on a pretty shitty situation. I feel like hybrid classes had the opportunity to be those unlikely heroes. Experienced parties, having your paladin back up to spam their meager heals when someone's out of mana can make the difference. Or, you know, the obvious like well-timed LOH. John said, sort of related story, completed a raid, distributing boss loot while things repopped. Suddenly the monk started running around and aggroing everything. Almost wiped the raid, but we scrambled and got it under control. Turns out he fell asleep on his keyboard. Sounds like my old guild leader. He was the Shadow Knight, and he would pass out so often. It became sort of a regular thing for us to have a guide or the GM show up and boot him towards the end of the night because he'd be running into a wall somewhere or whatever. By the time raids were over, because raids used to take so damn long, he would usually be drunk and asleep somewhere, and ideally not aggroing stuff and wiping us after the fact. It used to be in bug in EQ, if you mass inspected people, you could cause link death. That came in handy for asleep players. Holy shit, I forgot about that. I think that's actually true. We've tried to establish, instead of just going with like a simple alignment system within our world building, we've tried to really establish like a worldview that has a bit of complexity. Once we have our worldview, within every player race, there are splinter factions and those within that don't agree with certain aspects of whatever that worldview is, right? And so we've tried to get a bit of that in there because we also know that, one, we want it for storytelling. Two, we want it for the additional texture and complexity that it offers us just in general. And three, there are going to be those people that want to be, you know, they want to be the good deep elf, right? They want to be the Dritz. I think for us, we have tried to go in and get like a bit of complexity in the worldview, and that gives us an opportunity to have something not just be, this race is simply evil and they're all stupid, right? I mean, so you see that even with the decisions that we're making with ogres, where they're not just all dolts, there's some range there. But on the flip side, our decisions are being made based on what we think is interesting nuance and provides value to us, not because of any certain trend or certain hubbub that's going around or whatever. Not all necromancers are bad. Some are just trying to keep the family gatherings going. Okay, so on that, using that example, our necromancers aren't bad, right? So that's one change that we've had to discuss in here a bit. Undeath and necromancy are a thing. There is some general sort of disdain within different cultures for what they're doing. They think it's creepy the same way that you would probably, if you go back to like whatever 17th 18th century and look at research into science or medicine, they were treated differently than we treat them now, right? You'll see that. It'll be something that may be controversial. You'll see it when we release like the updated race class list. John, I know you're making some comments about that on Discord. One of the things that we're going to try, unless it's just completely rejected and we see it, sorry, I get distracted reading some of the other stuff. Yeah, so we'll see if it's rejected or what, but so our paladins, you can play as a paladin or an anti-paladin. A paladin is essentially a devotee and like a crusader for a specific faith, but that faith could be the god of slaughter, or it could be, you know, the god of harvests. That's one thing that we're trying to do. So you will see what will be considered evil paladins, and I've got to put air quotes around evil. I just want to say evil, right? You know, it's like, but what is evil really? If I can't call the god of slaughter evil, then I think we've hit a weird place in current year. So that type of thing. So we'll be looking at that. And like I said, necromancers aren't necessarily evil. Undeath isn't necessarily evil. That said, there's definitely a evil vibe coursing through a lot of what we'll be doing with undead. The god of taxes, definitely evil, yes. I always thought guard killing was an interesting aspect of EQ that I don't think survived into most subsequent MMOs. What are your thoughts on that? We want to embrace it, and part of what will be going on as we're implementing and then revising the implementation of like Night Harbor is ensuring that the base population of things like guards and internal garrisons, unique NPCs or key characters, it's done with the idea in mind that there may be some people using the city as a actual game space. So embracing it basically. I was thinking about that while I was following this one guy pathing around the yard earlier, right? It's one of those things we'll be looking at, what is their level, etc. So when do we expect players to engage them? But it's interesting for some of them. I was trying to think of a way of identifying whether or not they're being attacked as, you know, they're engaging just like a base pop mob in here and doing their job, or if they're being attacked by players. I was picturing essentially linking in triggers to see maybe if it's one of these patrolmen that are out here that you kill, they may, when they die, shout for assistance. But yeah, the idea of you being able to come in and fight in the city and camp different NPCs in the city, etc. Like we've already got it in for like, you know, just as examples, start putting in like these little ruffians and stuff like that, and different sort of more nefarious types that may engage you if you're not doing anything wrong. We want to have this district over here along the water, River Bend, be really just a combat space. There's already some bats and stuff flying around in here, but then, you know, it's that idea of like having the Sir Lucans and other targets within the city where some players will actually just be in here, you know, camping.